Welcome to Mr. Benja's ADD Experience Live for Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. We're back doing another interview slash discussion slash developer talk creative session with Michael Krehan today. He is coming at us from Irvine. Knew this guy back in Rockstar Games. We met on some good common ground. Learned he was a programmer, developer, just vibed with him on a lot of good aspects. And now he's doing big things at Google. Didn't realize it's been so long since I've known this guy, but you know how time passes on the internet. We're going to get him on today to talk about some good things and really get into his development psyche. Very interesting person, I think, and I'm glad to have him on for this one. So we're going to get him in here pretty soon. But for those of you who are new to this, be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and be sure to check us out on all the podcast streams, Instagram, obviously, um, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify podcast, et cetera, et cetera. Without too much further ado, we're going to go ahead and make this one happen. Been waiting to do this one for a little bit, so hope everybody's here. What's up, Mike? How you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing, Benja?
Good, good. You know, I've of all the people I wanted to set up an interview with, yours, I think I've done the most reshuffling of the questions in my head. How I want to approach this. I'm like, okay, get Mike on here. Let me see. We can go from this point of view, the directing, the photography, so many little touch points, you know.
This is gonna be fun.
I know. So first off, just in general, how are you? How are you feeling? How's everything going?
Actually, today I got my booster shot, and that stuff makes me hyper. So it's kind of like cocaine to me. Some I'm in a good mood right now. I actually brought some beer just to make sure I'm not going too high. If that doesn't work, I got some peanut butter whiskey on standby,
All right.
just to make sure we're good. But yeah, I think we'll be good. Yeah, no, I'm great. Things are good.
You know, I don't know if you remember this, but when I was doing my podcast way back in the day when Raf and I first started doing
Hey, the curious.
podcasts, yeah, the
Yeah,
ADQ
yeah.
well, the Payal podcast before that, we were just sitting around and talking noise, and Raf was like, "You should record these," and me, Marcellus, Jeff, and Raf were sitting around, and we're like, "All right, let's start recording them." We just started recording them, and I remember going through the process of figuring out how to, FTP audio files up to a server in a way that iTunes could read it and the RSS feeds were getting read correctly. And I would just remember thinking, like, dude, no one's checking for this stuff. What's going on? And you didn't have the same kind of analytics we have now. And then I think you mentioned one time, it's like, hey, what's up with your RSS feed? And I was like, oh, I thought, okay, cool.
Somebody's checking. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, even back then, you had it going on and we're keeping everybody around you sharp. So just want to say thanks for that. And maybe without you, I wouldn't be here doing this the way I am now.
I think everybody feeds off everybody in some way or another. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So
Good.
really quick.
Mhm.
So really quickly, give us a generic overview, high level origin story of who you are, what you do, and quick bit on how you got here.
I was born way too long ago back in Germany by accident. That's what my mom told me. And I started programming when I was 8. I also started playing with Super 8 camera when I was around that age. And yeah, around in my teens, I knew I wanted to be, but to move to the US. Right after military service, I went straight to the games in the opposite way you did, by the way. You can talk about that later. Like you were all prepared. I was not prepared at all. I just got it by accident. So I was just fooling around in Germany for a while and eventually got to college in the US. I couldn't work because I didn't have a permit, but I got to at least study and then get some jobs in game companies. Ended up at Midway at some point and Rockstar. And after 20 years in games, I decided that's enough. and went to Google. And I've been there since. Today is actually my 6th year at Google.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're obviously a Googler. I
I
didn't know the term. I didn't know the internal term, so I was like, Googleian, Googleite, but Googler makes perfect sense.
yeah. For the first year, you're a noogler. You get this hat right here when you graduate. And that's your
Mm,
noogler hat. You're a noogler for a year. If you have a dog, you're a doogler. If you leave the company, you're a zoogler. And there's Googlets. These are kids of Googlers.
yeah,
And there's a bunch of this stuff.
that seems very appropriate for that company, just from what I know of them on the outside.
They're pretty goofy on the inside, really. Like all our tools have like the most ridiculous names.
Yeah. So real quick, let me jump back. When you said you were in the military, like out of high school in Germany.
hmm hmm
Okay, and that lasted for how long?
That was 10 months,
10 months. Okay.
like just mandatory service.
Oh, mandatory. Okay.
Back then, yeah.
Right. Um, it's funny. I've been talking to a lot of, well, several military people who are in the civilian field now, I guess. And there's a certain ethic that a lot of them follow. And I think it's good and healthy, just that to at least have the experience of the military mindset of getting something done and getting in there. So I didn't know that about you, but that totally makes sense with your personality. I don't know if you know, that makes sense or not.
It does. And it forms you definitely. And I'm glad I did it. I'm glad it was only 10 months and not, I mean, 4 years or something. So it's a good enough time to absorb the environment, to absorb the discipline.
Yeah.
And it's very formative and helpful.
Yeah. A lot of people wouldn't see it that way. So what's formative and helpful about it, do you think?
Couple of things. I mean, yeah, you learn how to just suck up bullshit. Because if a superior tells you something, I mean, you gotta shut the fuck up. You just take it and you just say, well, that's how it is, and I'll just deal with it. In some cases, that's just the way you have to do it, even when you get a job later on. There's battles you can fight, and there's battles you just have to leave it as is. Also, you learn structure. I mean, you have to be up at a certain time. You have to clean your room every day. You have to clean the bathroom every day. You have to be at lunch at a certain time. You have these very strict um, setups in your life that you just have to adhere to. And of course, you learn lots of things about cleanliness, orderliness. You learn how to fold your shirts in a certain way. I see my wife is she's listening in right now, and she's going to disagree with me being like all neat and clean. But you do learn stuff about how to organize your clothes, and it's just stuff like that.
Yeah.
And repetitiveness, just lots of things that come up later in life. It just prepares you for it.
Yeah. No, that sounds like you would that sounds like it prepared you for getting into the American workforce or the game workforce, at least. Just that necessary structure and get in and kind of do it mentality. But you say you weren't ready?
I wasn't ready.
No, you said you weren't like as prepared to start working um in at least programming career. But uh,
Oh, you mean how I applied for a job?
oh yeah, I mean, you said you were
The
ready.
opposite
So
way. Um, Sorry, I'm just trying to remember what context because I did. Was it about the application for the game job?
no, I don't know. You had
Was it-
mentioned that. So I don't know how you got in the industry. When I got in, I was in school and said to myself, all right, working for Motorola is bullshit. Working for Eli Lilly's IT department. I love the company, but that's nonsense. That's not what I want to do, et cetera, et cetera. And there were just all these companies, Lockheed Martin, Abbott, et cetera, but they just seemed boring. Um, and that's what kind of led me away from that. And video games got me into technology in the first place. So I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm taking the plunge. I'm just gonna. I was working in the career development center at the time, actually, in both my undergrad and my grad work. I was working in the career development center. So getting to the point where I'm telling people, yes, you need to be very serious about your your career choices. And then they hear about me wanting to go into video games, which wasn't kind of a thing at the time, you know, just to have a career. It wasn't as big and there weren't schools like Full Sail or structured programs. So for me, it was kind of out there to do that. And yeah, I wanted to contrast that with maybe your experience, how you decided, hey, I'm going to get in here and do this. I'm gonna find my way into midway. So how did that happen for you?
Yeah, for me, it was the opposite, basically. Yeah, I started playing games when I was 8. I was one of the first pretty much in school to have a home computer and to play games. And shortly after that, I started writing code.
Hmm.
And I started writing games at age 10. I mean, of course, they sucked, but I just wrote stuff. At some point, I had an Amiga. I wrote lots of Amiga stuff. And in my teens, it was pretty clear to me, okay, this is what I do. I make video games.
Okay.
And so I never even went to school. I just graduated from high school, did my military service. And even before I finished my military service, I already went to a company nearby and I was like, yo, I want to work for you guys. The difference with how you did it is, I mean, by the way, if anybody hasn't listened to your interview with Diaz on the Out of Play podcast, they have to. Oh, it's amazing. Episode 2, listen to it. But I mean, you described how you prepared for it by just like researching every single company in detail and writing a customized cover letter and being very specific, targeting the company. I was a total dumbass. I just rolled over there with no preparation whatsoever, showed them the demo didn't work. It just crashed right away. And I just said the dumbest things. Like, they were like, why do you want to make video games? I'm like, what else am I supposed to do? Stuff like that. You know, it made sense to me at the time, but of course, it was just a stupid thing to say. And they were clear, we're not going to hire this guy. But I had applied while I was still in the military service. I came back 2 months later. I'm like, hey, remember me? I was here 2 months ago and I said I want to work here. Can I work here now? And they're like, who the fuck are you? They forgot about me. That's why they gave me a job.
They
If
forgot
they had,
about you completely.
yes, yes. If they had remembered me, they would have never given me a job. But good thing is they forgot who I was. And they were like, okay, I guess some random kid has just given like peanuts. It paid me like $200 in the first month. But yeah, and they didn't employ me. It just made me a contractor.
Okay.
And they're like, yeah, just write code. And I wrote code and it was good. And that's how my career started. And once you get your foot in the door, it's okay. But just getting in is the hard part.
Yeah, totally. What what did you start programming on when you were younger? If you remember,
Um, at the company or as a kid?
as a kid.
As a kid, everything. I made text adventures. I made platform games. On the Amiga, I had a friend, one of my closest friends was an artist. And so we were planning to make this racing game. And it was actually really cool. It ran at 50 frames per second, which was for Amiga pretty good.
Yeah.
It had like a dynamic streaming system. It was actually, from a code point of view, pretty awesome. But of course, being this little, snot-nosed teen, I never really finished it. I just wrote some stuff and never completed it. But yeah, I wrote a bunch of different things and were, from a technical point of view, actually pretty cool. But I
So
never finished anything.
so was that like how did you get access to that computer? I remember when I was young, I started screwing around with, you know, figuring out all of the I was the kid who was trying to figure out all of the buttons on the VCR, figure out how to get rid of the flashing 12 o'clock, you know. I'd go over to my friend's house and see the flashing 12 o'clock. And I'm like, hold on, give me a second. I'll go eat with you in a second, but I've got to fix your VCR because this is bugging me, kind of thing. And that became my, you know, thing, just kind of figuring out all these little buttons and stuff. And one day my mother brought me a Commodore VIC 20. She saw at at a garage sale. She was like, she was like, to my dad, she was like, Earl, let's just give it to him, see what he does with it. He's gonna play around. Either he'll keep on playing around or whatever. And my dad was like, he's got to plug it up to a TV. Now he's gonna be using the TV, and we already have the game system. And you know, my dad was like, yeah, whatever. He'll learn something. So it was the Commodore VIC 20, and I found out that you could actually program games on there. I was like, okay, and that changed everything. Um, so yeah, that was my kind of entry. And I see that you had similar something with the Amiga. So that comes up a lot in discussions, the Amiga system. So I'm glad we had that little camaraderie there because I don't think I've ever spoken with you about that.
Yeah, yeah, that was good times. Amiga was a great machine. It was made for like coders, like people who just like write quick and dirty code. It had such good hardware. It was ahead of its time. My first computer was a ZX Spectrum. It's like this British computer. I don't think people in the US really know it that well. And
I know of it, but I don't know it.
yeah, it wasn't mine. My mom bought it for my dad as a present, but he was always busy. He never really did anything with it at all. I'm like, what's that? I just started, playing with it. And eventually I was just obsessed and I just spent pretty much all day, every day with it.
Hmm.
And yeah, I started writing code in BASIC and a year later I started writing code in assembly. And I just kept writing. My parents never told me to get away from it. So I just, spent hours and hours and hours every day just writing code. And in a way, I mean, I kind of missed out on a lot of, that childhood thing people do. Like I didn't spend as much time being out and about and playing soccer with my friends, but at the
That
same time, I could, yeah,
that childhood thing that people do. That's comedy.
right. But maybe that's why now I'm so into sports and making up for all the things I didn't do back then.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I do want to touch on that at some point. It's funny. Now, did you come from a? You mentioned. I don't want to gloss over this. You said you kind of started, and then a very short time later, you were doing assembly programming.
Yeah.
That sounds nuts to me.
It's, I was 8 years old when I started basic. I was 9 when I started assembly. And I think they are languages. And as a
Yeah,
kid,
yeah.
it's easy to pick up languages,
Hmm.
which is something I regret with my kids. I never managed to teach them other languages. I was trying to raise them bilingually, but it's not easy. So I gave up on it. But it's so easy for kids to pick up languages. And I think for me, I was at the right age and I just understood it eventually.
Yeah. I I didn't go that I didn't go into assembly. I was introduced. No, I remember actually. A friend of my brother's who was a programmer or who was into computers, he found out that I had a programmer. I had a programming language on my computer, my Vic 20 or whatever, and I was doing stuff on it. So when I got my next computer, he came by and gave me a copy of C and Pascal. So that took me out of basic and quick basic very quickly. And I was like, oh, here we go. And I was like, oh, I can shut down the computer just by messing up memory addresses and see, okay, this is awesome. My mom's trying to type something and she's like, what have you done? And I'm like, oh, screwing up stuff. So before we go on, let's I'll get back to some of the programming stuff if it's necessary well, in a little bit. But one thing I wanted to point out is I've always respected you as a creator and somebody who just gets in and does it. But I never, I don't know exactly when, how we met, but it was very early on. I remember, and me, it was me, Pete, and Raph around at some point, and your name came up. Blah blah blah. We're doing something. Mike Krehan. And I'm like, Mike, you mean the programmer guys? Yeah, okay. And somehow your name came up. And then I don't know how it happened, Mike, but somebody goes, and it may not have even been one of those two. Somebody goes, I forgot how it came up, and it's gonna kill me. But somebody said, you mean it's like they like, hey, he goes by Ebo Mike, right? And it was kind of like this weird comment, and kind of like looked around, I was like, Ebo Mike, why? And I didn't know you at all at the time. I was like, I just go by Evo Mike. And it was like, I don't know. I was like, well, seems like a nice guy. It just kind of stuck in my head. So when I met you, I was talking, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking, so why is he Eagle Mike? Seems like a nice guy. Cool. Whatever. Um, but now I know you. And for people who are going to check out your profile or see your name show up on my description of you or whatever, where does that come from? Evil Mike.
Did I ever tell you?
You told me, and I've kind of forgotten about it from our initial meeting. It was a long time ago because it's been like what, 12 longer years now?
2006. So, oh god, it's more.
Yeah,
It's almost 16 years.
15.
It was
Hmm.
yeah, it was January, so it's like almost 16 years. So yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, pretty often people ask me, I kind of deflect. I'm like, "What do you think?" And I give them a day or something to think about it. But okay,
Yeah.
um, I think that name kind of came in my 20s. I don't even remember how I got the name, but it's for Ebony Mike. It was still back when I was in Germany, but I was kind of somehow really got into black culture.
Mhm.
And so I somehow ended up with this name. I don't know how, why, but that's the name I had, and I kind of stuck with it. And now I'm really embrace it in every possible way. Like even at Google, you can pick your username. So if you write to evilmike at google.com, that's me. That's my work email address.
Awesome. Now, was that a did that go over well in Germany? I don't know how
They don't get it.
situation there.
Yeah, I mean, they don't get much of that anyway. So
Okay.
it just flies over people's heads. During my childhood, I was Milka, and that name I got from one of my sisters. And I
Milk.
don't know, yeah, which is the name of a chocolate brand in Germany.
Okay. A chocolate bread. Now I get it.
Yeah, you can look it up. It's actually delicious. They have good
I,
stuff.
I gotta try it out. I don't get enough foreign confections anymore. I used to when I was working in games wherever, just run into people who had stuff, and I'd end up eating it. So and there was that little restaurant by Rockstar Games.
Tip top meats.
Of course, yes, exactly. So I'd try stuff from there too. Excellent place. Put me on a
Mm,
lot of interesting stuff.
they're still around.
So when you were at Rockstar, you get there, you've got this methodology of at, from when I know you, I've always known you to have the ideology, methodology, the credo of just do it. Because I
Right.
remember people would stand around, they'd be talking about something, and you would just cut through the cloud of the discussion, cut through all the nonsense and BS, and say, sounds good, do it. Well, tomorrow we're gonna have to, yeah, do it. Okay, well, let's call him over and we'll get him over here and make sure that you do it. And I love that about you because it's the interesting little thing that sits in your head. And we know when you're coming around. I don't you probably may not recognize this, but when people see you coming around, they're like, all right, he's coming. I gotta do something. Uh when did you start putting that into play?
It's funny. I think I remember having this catchphrase, let's do it, like as early as when I was maybe 10 or so back in Germany. Even. But to me back then, it was just like an empty phrase. But I must have said it a lot because I was in a chess club, and at some point, the uh, chess club owner gave me this little statue of this guy that had like, let's do it, just um, written on. So for some reason, I had this phrase forever. But this mentality of doing something needs to be done, I had that pretty early on. Maybe it comes to working at little third party developers. Like in 99, I worked at a company that made Mission Impossible for PlayStation 1, and we were 6 people. That's the whole company. And naturally, I mean, stuff needs to get done. You only have 6 people. You can't push it to anybody else. So I just end up picking up a lot of stuff that needs to be done. Like something needs to be done. Sure, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
And I stuck with that. And even at bigger companies like Midway, I we used Alien Brain, which is I don't know if you know Alien Brain's like a version control
Yeah.
system, and it's atrocious. And it was so bad at some point, I just wrote a bunch of scripts and stuff to convert everything to Perforce because it just helped the company a lot. It was never, I was never even scheduled to do it, but I just did it. And in the end, it helped everybody a lot.
Yeah.
Same thing with, like they had this archaic system to lock the code base by sending an email and saying, hey, I'm about to commit something. Nobody else committed anything.
Right.
So I wrote a tool that is in your system tray that you can use to just lock the code base. Again, it needed to be done, and I just did
Yeah.
it. And I think even now I'm go ahead.
No, no, I totally like that, and I know for me at least that causes frustrations, and not for you, but for a lot of other people, just coming in there and doing something can really throw a lot of people off. What do you think that's about?
Um, I don't know, I feel maybe my mentality is different from many others in that I feel like,
It is.
yeah, maybe it's a sense of stuff just needs to get done and it's justified means in a way. So it doesn't matter who does something, but it needs to be done. So let's do it.
Yeah. I think we've I don't know what's happened, and um I've actually really softened myself up since going into going into the college experience, going into my early years of work. I used to be very, listen, uh, I did this, don't bother me. Uh, if it doesn't work, we'll change it. Don't worry about your ego. We don't care. No one cares. And I would just get in there and start doing things and kind of expected that of others. And I had to actually pull back a bit, quite a bit. And it's weird now because I think I messed myself up in a bit where I have a I've been working on my marketing and socialization and getting out there and, being friendly with people. Now it turned them off because they don't expect me to all of a sudden stop and say, all right, we're just going to do it. We're just going to get in there. And so I'm really having a problem with just the cultural pushback to being uncomfortable with going forward doing things, which seems to be better for people, but they just have this discomfort. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, um, it's uncomfortable in both directions. For me, it's like when I see something needs to be done and nobody else picks it up, I'm like, okay, what was wrong? Why is nobody doing something? It frustrates me.
Hmm.
In the same way, they frustrate others that I have this urge to just do everything. Like at Google, every project has like an on call, a rotating on call, where it's somebody's turn for a week to just make sure everything works right.
Hmm.
And pretty often when something happens, I end up doing it because on call doesn't respond quickly enough. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll just do it.
Right.
And it really frustrates me because I'm like, okay, I shouldn't be doing this stuff. But in the end, I do it because it has to be done.
Yeah. Now, I know for at least for me, um, I've gotten used to the short term uncomfortable nature and people accepting me over the long term. So if I frustrate somebody for a week, it's okay because we're much closer, we're much further along, and we're much better off a month down the line, 2 months down the line. And, we can, and now people come to expect that from me. They're like, don't worry about it. That's just Benjamin doing whatever he does or whatever. Um, I mean, there were people we weren't supposed to talk to in at Rockstar. Um, well, not we weren't supposed to. It just wasn't in the flow of things.
Mhm.
I have nothing bad to say about them, but there were just certain patterns that people followed, and when you broke those patterns, it was like, people were like, "Oh, oh, he's breaking the pattern." Um, Has that gotten easier for you? Have you gotten to a place of understanding with, look, I'm just going to do this, and I want people to know that. Like, how do you deal with that now? Your workflow.
I think when you go against the flow, when you disrupt something, in a way, you expect people to just adjust, but they don't. And I guess for me, it's just um, changing my expectations. I'm just saying, well, it's just my flow is different, and people are not going to accept it, and that's just how it is. And I just keep doing my thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of people will actually actively push back on your flow, even if it's something that they want. You know what I mean? You ever get that?
Not so much. I wouldn't say people actually push back against it. More like people just say, yeah, weird, but whatever. You do it. You do you. And they just do their thing. I do mine. And but I haven't gotten pushback in a way.
Okay. Oh yeah, we might need to amp up your assholery a little bit to get that kind of get that
Oh,
kind
that's
of
pretty high
pushback.
already.
No, I love it. I actually wore a shirt to work one day that said that, and I got told to take it off. So it's just asshole on my shirt. So I was like, all right. Now aside from programming though, you continue to create in other ways, which was fascinating to me. Because I always like to see people that are doing things on different parallels. So you're also a photographer, direct, and a film director. Where did those two come into play?
It's yeah. Most of the things that define me now were kind of established really early on. I mean, I started programming when I was 8. I started playing with film cameras when I was 8. And photography kind of also came along the way. Like my dad took lots of pictures, and he kind of showed me some things. So it's been with me the whole time, and it just stuck with me. Like maybe, for example, it was back before phones had cameras on them. I always had a camera in my pocket. I always carried a camera with me, and I took pictures of stuff going on in the office. I was famous for that. I'm like, oh, here's the guy with a camera. And in retrospect, now, I mean, I cherish my pictures because there are so many moments that would have almost been lost had it not for pictures to, keep them around. Sometimes I just randomly look at old pictures and relive those moments. And I kind of forgot a lot about my childhood. And I'm kind of frustrated there's no pictures of what happened back then because I generally don't remember lots of things that happened back then. At the same time, I think when I'm old and busted and just like drool and sit in a rocking chair or something, I think what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna put on the VR headset and just look at old pictures 24/7. I just look at things from the past and relive them.
Yeah,
Because really, pictures are what takes a moment and makes it um, eternal.
yeah. I was
And
on.
yeah, go ahead.
I was fascinated by not just your photography and photo collection, but you actually had the website going on where you could plow through all the photos you had created, and I was like, this dude is in there making stuff happen in a way that's just it. I dug it because it actually reminds me now of like what I do with Google Photos.
Hmm. Yeah, I switched to Google Photos now, but yeah, I wrote my own little photo management system to keep track of my pictures and the important things. I tagged every single picture by hand so I could just search for all pictures with that person or that location or that thing. And I've done it so many times. Like I was just, you know, somewhere talking to people and we had a random conversation about something that happened. I was like, hold on. I just took my phone. I just entered like name of this person, name of this person, name of this object, and brings up a picture. I'm like, oh yeah, here's a picture of that. And people love that. I'm like, oh, so cool. You got a picture. And I mean, it's so awesome to be able to show something or relive something from the past. And so it's really important to be able to just bring up pictures from very specific moments you're talking about. And yeah, I mean, I wrote this picture database back in '98. It was so got the technology behind it was like ridiculous, but it worked.
Yeah, yeah. No, it did. I was terribly fascinated by it. Do you think that like now where we are in time, you talked about putting on the VR headset and just maybe flying through your own little metaverse of photos and whatever. Um yeah, are you you're I would assume that you're kind of happy all of this is here and we have access to all of this. How are you feeling about like uh the technology and yeah, even like this metaverse discussion that's been going on? How are you feeling about that?
I mean, technology in general, I embrace it. I love everything. I love that Google Photos is able to identify people, identify objects, and kind of make assumptions about where something is taken. So I can just make a query and it just tells me all the pictures. I mean, I've used it so many times and it's fantastic. Now, metaverse, I mean, okay, I have some choice words about Zuckerberg. So, a metaverse specifically, I don't know how I feel about that, but VR in general, I love. So, yeah, I mean, the technology itself is amazing. So, I love the place we're in right now that we are able to store terabytes worth of pictures and access them like within seconds. I love that we're able to have VR with almost fully realistic graphics. I mean, there's so much stuff you can do. And I'm digging it.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
No, it's pretty fascinating. And speaking of like Google Photos, I actually tried a random query. I haven't like researched what it could do, what the parameters were, or anything like that. But I know that I'd been going to art galleries for years, and I just had all these pictures of paintings that I had taken, and I was on Google Photos one day. I was like, red paintings, and boom, just a screen full of red paintings came up, and that's when my mind kind of exploded. Like, holy crap, here we are.
Right, right. I mean, my own system I wrote, you had to tag everything by hand.
Mhm.
On one hand, it was good because it was reliable. Like even if you saw somebody's head from like in a corner from the back, I tagged it and it worked. But at the same time, Google Photos can tag things you don't think about, like a color, like you said, or some random object somewhere. So, and it saves you lots of time too. It just tags everything it can identify it. It's so convenient. So yeah, I love tech. I mean, tech saves you a lot of time, which is something really important to me and gives you all these possibilities, like looking for things, looking for a combination of things, like
Mhm.
find red paintings or red cars, and it's able to do that for you. Yeah,
Has it
that's cool.
is think it's getting to is there any point of it that starts to get out of control? I think people are starting to worry about these AI systems, the tagging, the precognitive kind of thoughts where it's like, oh, you must want to buy this because whatever algorithm we're running says you should be buying this and so forth. Does any of that concern you?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't share this vision that AI is going to go out of control and just become sentient. Because no, AI does what you tell it to. If you AIs, you train the system to recognize or classify certain things.
Hmm.
Like you give it a list of dogs and it gives you dogs. You give it you tell it to go to war, it goes to war, but it doesn't really do things on its own by and large. Of
It,
course, you can use AI to, extrapolate data that's kind of, yeah, if you're unscrupulous, yeah, you can do some bad things. You can kind of go pretty deep into somebody's privacy. I mean, for example, there's a company that harvest data. They go through all the public profiles on Facebook, take the names and
hmm.
take the pictures and create a database of faces and names and sell that.
Yeah.
So if your Facebook profile has your real name and your picture, then you are in the database. And it could be conceivably used to identify you in any random picture. So there's that. And that's nice.
So right. Now, I mean, the unscrupulous types are there, and that is one area of concern always. Just you know, um, the unscrupulous people. But then there's this idea that technology starts to get to a place where it's more, uh, it's a bit out of control. Like we start just doing stuff, and we don't have the proper social or structural systems in place to stop us in time before something bad goes wrong, if that makes any sense. Where we just start, hey, let's put this AI system out there. Let's put this face recognition thing out there. Let's put, we start putting all these tools out there, and somehow we start to end up in a bad place. I think a silly example, not silly, but one example was when Microsoft created their AI Twitter.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I learn from people, and people are trash, so it's trash.
Right,
But that's ultimately my concern. I'm not worried about tech. I'm worried about people.
right.
Like tech by itself, not that big of an issue, but yeah, people, they do bad things. People using tech to bad things is worse because tech makes bad people more efficient and effective.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually on your side with that. I kind of like I agree with the the Zuckerberg slash Facebook credo of move fast and break things. You get in there, you try to figure stuff out. And what's funny is when I heard that being parroted back on the news and in a lot of the media where they were saying break things, they took that to mean, well, don't just put out like the idea of that I thought was always to put stuff out. If something goes wrong, like a wheel falls off your car or whatever, you stop, you fix it, you go on, and then the windshield cracks, you fix that and keep going. That's what I was thinking about when move fast and break things. It's like, oh, you're going to figure out the problems along the way. But what's funny is what I heard from people who aren't into technology, who are um, just out there speaking about it. It makes it sound like move fast and destroy whatever's in your way, kind of break things. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. There's this whole other line of thought out there that's not technology based, that's, um, fomenting all these fears and weird ideas about things. So I don't know if that means it.
Yeah. But there's a third interpretation or a third possibility, which is
Mhm.
break stuff by accident, which you're familiar with Google Buzz, right? Google Buzz was Google's first attempt at social media before Google Plus, and they kind of opted everybody in, and
Mhm.
they automatically made everybody friends with people they contacted with. So, like
Uh,
divorced, um, like women who are divorced,
yeah.
automatically friends with like their ex-husbands who are abusive,
Right.
and yeah, pretty bad things happened. And actually, Google got pretty swift kick in the ass from I think the FTC, and they had to um, implement some. They were required to implement some privacy regulations that we now have to apply to every single thing we do. But yeah, there's the break things part, which doesn't necessarily mean like your software is broken. It means your procedures are broken, like your privacy protections are broken,
Yeah.
and that is a big concern when you actually cause harm, not because you intended to, just because you didn't think it through, because you moved fast and you broke something. And in this case means, yeah, you did something that actually caused somebody to, you know, be harassed by somebody or something like that.
Yeah.
So is that interpretation,
Right.
which is equally bad.
Yeah. I think there needs to be, in general, more education out there about the processes of technology. I think a lot of people and a lot of institutions just try to put forth this, hey, here's a computer, it can do your taxes. Hey, here's, and it's not to a lot of people, it's not something that should be embraced and kind of understood. It's just this tool that sits over there. But I think a lot of the underlying processes and a lot of the thought the thought structures, the ways of thinking about things that technology brings you, I think that's necessary for society. I'm pretty sure you agree with this also. But yeah, even by the way you've shown me what you've introduced to your children, so like the idea of technology and putting it forward in that way. Um, I don't know if like you have your kids in school now. Are you seeing the STEM programs? Are they up to par, or how are you seeing things from that public education point of view? I guess.
They're okay. I think they're still. I'm almost gonna say they're in their infancy still.
Okay.
I think they should start a lot earlier and just go more in depth about tech. I think the last 2 years, at least, after COVID, everything went online,
Hmm.
and that kind of pushed um, schools a lot more to be online and to require technology. Like the last school year, my kids had to do everything. They had to create PowerPoint or Google Slides presentations. So it got them closer into tech, but I think there's still a lot missing in public schools about how to handle online, how to handle yourself online and what to watch out for. There's just a lot that they're not really dealing with it. Or even programming. I mean, I think programming should be a part, just basic programming should be part of the curriculum, but there's really nothing like that.
Yeah.
The only thing even close is my daughter right now is an elective in high school, like game design. And even that is kind of like pretty weak, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, so what they do. So there's a lot they could do. And yeah, I think it's going to take a while until they get to where they should be.
So when you say it's kind of weak, they're just scratching the surface. They're
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
really not okay.
Yeah. They have computer room, but yeah, there's not much going on.
There's a room, there's computers in it, but
Pretty
no
much.
no real computing happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Coming from a technological background, I remember, my parents were trying to figure out something for me to do after school, and I ended up in the computer lab. And what I didn't know is my parents cut a deal with the people in the computer labs. Like, listen, he's just going to sit in the corner and mess around on the computer, and he'll be there. And they're like, okay, well, the computer lab is closed from these hours. Like, listen, we can't have him running around school. Just put him in the computer lab. Trust us. He'll be fine. You know. And they were like, okay. Um, and years later now, I found out that, that was my little after school program that my parents cut a deal with the computer club, not computer club, the computer um room owners at the school at the time. So it's odd to me almost when I see people who are just doing things and they don't have that technological understanding, even though so much of our world is being pushed by technology now. So I guess I kind of get it when I see stuff on the news or I see people complaining about how come this isn't working. It's like, well, because you haven't taken the proper, you know, even not even computer wise, just the proper mental steps that technology would have taught you. So, you know, person meet real world technology meet person. This is how it works. So yeah, it's bizarre, but I totally agree. The pandemic has sped things up, um, in a good way. So that's one of the good things that's come out of it, right?
Right. And I mean, at least now they have to use computers productively. They have to create something with them. They have to write assignments in Google Docs. They have to create presentations in Google Slides. It's great. That's a good start. But there's a lot more to it. that they should also be teaching. Not to mention, what to watch out for when you're online. There's like so many basic guidelines and rules that they never bring up. So I think there
Yeah.
should be a curriculum. There should be like a whole class about it. But just talk about it.
Yeah, I actually think that with the advancement of technology, we've we've grown past that rough point where you kind of had to, like when I was coming up, if you really wanted to play Doom or Quake in the proper way on your PC, you were breaking out the config.6, you know, autoexec.bat, and you were doing the custom boot files and everything and all that kind of jazz. At the very least, you know what I mean? And
Right, right.
we had, if you really wanted to do something in Windows a certain way, you'd have to, break out the registry once in a while and say, okay, you need to turn this and this off, but be careful, blah, blah, blah. And there were things you would stumble upon that you really had to learn the system. And what's interesting now is we've gotten to the point where we're covering that up more and more, to the point where Apple put out their commercial, what is a computer? I don't know if you saw that commercial.
I'm not.
There's a fascinating commercial where this young girl is running around, she's editing videos, she's taking pictures, and she's doing it on her iPad, right? And she goes over to like a friend's house where her friend's mother is kind of, fixing up the house, and the little girl is kind of playing on her iPad while her friend mother's just fixing up the house. And at one point, the friend's mother goes, "Hey, so I see you got your new computer there. What are you doing on it? Your new computer?" And the little kid, this total hipster kid, looks up, or barely looks up, and she's like, "What's a computer?" And it kind of blew my mind. I was like, "Oh my gosh, they've glossed everything over so much that you don't even need to know this stuff." And now I actually wonder if we're losing some of that edge. And like as you said, some of this, STEM programs you're talking about, they're very surface level. So seeing that commercial, you got to watch that if you haven't seen it.
I gotta check it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, things are getting more high level. I mean, back in the days, everybody, like if you had a PC, you had to configure your IRQs if you have new hardware.
Hmm.
I don't remember those days.
Yeah.
Like, you don't do that anymore. It's like so much of a low level stuff is just gone now. Which is okay. It's kind of like, now everybody writes stuff on the computer, but nobody knows how to write stuff with pen and paper anymore.
Yeah.
But I feel like you still need to know the basics. You gotta know your basics. If you know all the layers on top, you gotta know your basics. Because at some point you have to fall back to them. There's gonna be a point when you have to go back to the lowest level and do something. If you don't know it, you're screwed. So I feel like that's actually a common problem now. People just start on the top and they don't know what's underneath.
Yeah.
So once you scratch the surface, there's a big unknown that they don't understand.
Yeah. I definitely agree there. And I was, here's a good transition. I was actually introduced to that concept outside of technology by a physical trainer. Um, and I know you're into you're into health. You're doing the tough mother thing, mutter. And I had a physical trainer in when I was in the Bay Area working for 3DO, and I was thinking, all right, we're gonna have this crazy program. We're gonna get in the elliptical and do all this. And the trainer was like, "Listen, what do you really want to know?" I was like, "Well, I want to know this, this, and this." And they were like, "Do you really want to know? Because I could put you through this glossy program, or you could actually learn something." I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I want to learn something." And it was like the basics of, okay, these are, you know, this is your kind of muscle system. And here, if you do a proper push up, and I'm thinking, am I paying a personal trainer to learn how to do push ups, and why, They're like, no, no, no. See, when your arms are closer together and this and that versus how you do it this way. And, let's go for a little jog. What about the treadmills? And like, no, no, let's go for a quick jog in the front. I want to show you. And taking it back to the basics, just understanding how all that stuff builds up to what the advanced levels are talking about or what the current technology is doing. I kind of didn't see it until I ended up working with the physical trainer. You know what I mean?
Right.
So on the technology side, it all kind of made sense. But then I started looking at that with everything. I'm like, oh, so your physical side, the creative side, the art, the writing, anything else, you could take it back to the basics. And it's a really fundamental thing. And I think that you got that pretty down and or pretty well understood across a lot of disciplines. So that's one thing I've definitely noted you for in my little notebook of, all right, this guy knows something about getting back to the basics and just doing it. But as I said, you ran the Tough Mudder. What made you decide to do that? Well, actually, could you explain it really quickly, first of all, what that is?
So these kind of mud runs, there's a Spartan race, there's Tough Mud and others. They're basically races, um, different durations. Like Tough Mud is usually 10 miles. And the terrain is often pretty tough. It goes uphill, downhill, those pretty crazy things. Then you have obstacles. Obstacles could be you have to climb a 10-foot wall. It could be you have to carry a heavy rock. Tough Mud in particular, there's lots of obstacles that just, fuck with you. Like one is you have to jump into ice cold water and submerge yourself. One is you get shocked with like 10,000 volts. And one is you have to jump from 15 feet.
I didn't know the part about getting shocked. I knew the other one.
Well, that's the best part. That's always at the end. It's like I'll show you some pictures. It's like you're looking at like tons of wires
Hmm.
and half of them carry 10,000 volts and you have to run through them. And yeah, it saps the fuck out of you. It just stings for like a second, but that second was like, holy shit,
Yeah.
it's fun. And I don't know if you remember Rachel at Rockstar. I think she was after your time. She tried to go through really slowly. She was careful. She just got zapped left and right. I just run through it,
Man.
which again is I think is formative in a way. It again is a whole do it part. It means okay, in front of you are wires that shock you and hurt you. You can go through them carefully, try to avoid them, but you can't because there's so many of them. Or you could just suck it up and just run through it. And that's my mentality. I'm like, okay, there's something in front of me and it sucks. It needs to be done. So do it. And we're back to do it. So these wires, I like the obstacle because again, it kind of reminds me if there's something you need to do, you may as well just get it over with. That
Yeah.
hurts less than trying to drag it out and, slowly go through it because you can't. It's gonna suck. It will hurt you. Do it, and then it's over.
When did you first do those?
The first one was a Spartan that was in 2012. I did it with John Diaz.
Right.
Yeah, and David Counts and Dan Archer. The first Spartan was 2013. That was you remember Raul, concept artist,
No, I don't.
and Hurtado and Adrian. We did that, and I've been doing them since. I've done 18 so far. I got a big one coming up in May in Philly. That one is going to be like 10 hours, and you do 3 laps, so it's going to be 50 kilometers. It's going to be like 30 something miles.
Yeah. Was this your first time doing anything like that?
The 2012 one?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been running before that. I mean, again, in my youth, I was like a fucking nerd. I didn't do much sports. I did box in my teens. Other than that, I didn't do anything. So yeah, I I think my sister-in-law kind of inspired me. She did marathons forever.
Mhm.
And she got us to run a 5K and a 10K, a half marathon, and a full marathon. So I got into the whole running part. But at some point, I got bored of it. It feels running. It's just like, it's just running. And I don't know. it gets boring after a while. And I don't know who got us into a Spartan. It may have been Hurtado, may have been Diaz, but somebody brought it up like, hey, let's just try it. And we did the Spartan in LA. It was a 5K. It was like, 3 miles. And we
Mhm.
tried it. It was interesting. It was fun. So I just got a taste of it. And then we tried the Tough Mudder, which was 10 miles, and it was fun. And I got hooked. And I think I talked about a buddy of mine 20 something years ago. We were talking about Jackass.
Yeah.
And we're like, why are they doing that? Why are they like hurting themselves? And I mean, of course, to get paid, but why else? And we're like, maybe it's so you feel alive. You feel you're still here. And I think that's a big part for me. It's like I feel alive. I feel free. I'm like jumping in mud, crawling through mud. And it's so different from your everyday life. It just feels good.
I want to say, uh, I agree with you, but there's a little bit of masochism in there that 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 helps push us forward and toughen us up. Um, it's really the idea of, hey, I'm going on a run. There's going to be a lot of people there. It's going to be this happy little run. And at some point, you say, you know what? Screw this. I need to carry a large, heavy boulder and run through electric wires and climb walls, crawl through the mud. There's a certain jump in your mind that says, this clearly isn't enough for me. I need to go further. And
Right.
I love that. That I don't even know what to call that little breaking point. But R- Raph Raph doesn't call it this, but he always says it. He's just sitting around and suddenly he'll go, "This is bullshit."
But I mean, it's masochism at the same time.
Mhm.
Working is masochism because you're just dealing with other shit. And the other thing is, after you done with your race, you're like, I still got it. And you get this feeling, I still got it. And you just feel good about yourself. And you're like, it's been years. I'm like in my mid 40s. A lot of people say they're like old and busted at 40. I'm like, no, I still got it.
Yeah.
And that's my main takeaway. I still got it. And it just feels good. And it lasts. It's like a feeling that lasts for a while.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about that breakthrough kind of just jump in and uh do it kind of thing. It's the maybe the exploratory nature of not just the outside world but yourself as well, because I think you really come to an understanding of who you are and a clarity on your existence, if that makes any sense.
Right. And there's my favorite story is where I got the Spartan. It was my Hawaii Ultra Beast. That was the toughest I've done so far. It was 26 miles and 50 obstacles, like crazy hard. And after mile 15, I was done. I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I stopped running. I was walking. At some point, I couldn't walk anymore. I was just fucking lying on the ground. People walk past me like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm just resting." Like,
Yeah.
I walked a little bit. I lay down. I'm like, "Okay, this is bullshit. I'm out." So I'm like, "Okay, next water station, I'm gonna just ask him to call me right back to a starting line because I'm done. I can't walk anymore." So I walk to the next water station. I walk up to the person. I'm about to ask him like, "Okay, yo, call me a cab." All of a sudden, I hear like, "Hey, Michael," and it's like this person I met once. She's a friend of my sister-in-law. Like she goes to her boot camp. We're in fucking Hawaii. I don't
Yeah.
know anybody around here.
Yeah.
And she's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm not good, dude. I'm out of here. I gotta quit because I can't do this anymore." She's like, "You can't quit. You always tell people to go." And I was so weird. She's like, "You can't quit. You always tell your sister she can. She needs to keep going. So you gotta keep going." I'm like, "Okay." And so I just walked with her. And now I was walking the entire time. Sometimes I was faster than her and I finished. Took
Yeah.
me 13 hours. I finished. And that taught me like, okay, this is all in your head.
Yeah.
Like, and that was one of the most formative things I had happen to me. And it just keeps me going. When I think I'm tired, when I think, okay, I can't do this anymore, I keep going because I realize, no, this is all in your head.
Definitely. Do you know who David Goggins is?
I do not.
Right. He might be worth looking into. Um, between David Goggins, David Blaine, certain other uh, Gary Vaynerchuk, certain people who just push, right? Uh, Um, I've come to this understanding, and I'm definitely not saying anybody should do anything that I do or you do here, but you get to a certain point and the the alarm bells, the notifications in your body start telling you things. And there's some gray area where you're just getting a warning and you're actually in danger of something, if you know what I mean. So at
Hmm.
some point, you get like a little warning that's like, hey, uh, we're the hamstrings. We're hurting. We're gonna send you some messages here. But you're not really in danger of really damaging yourself. You're just getting that early warning signal and pushing through that and letting your body know, your mind know, all your facilities are getting together to say, oh, okay, we're actually going there. We're actually going to do this. Well, let's turn off the warning system for a second and keep pushing through it because we've all made the decision, the legs, the heart, cardiovascular system, mind, everybody gets together and says, oh, well, we're just doing this now. We're not pulling off to the side of the road. We've got some person in Hawaii telling us to keep going. We got to do it. So, yeah, listening to those guys got me on another level and trying different things, figuring out, no, I can push through this. I'm probably only hitting 40% to 60% of what I'm really capable of. And until I get to the higher levels, I'm not really damaging myself. I'm just frustrating the system. I'm just pushing the system, stretching it out a little bit. So I think that makes sense to people like you and me. Uh,
Right, right.
just that little extra bit of push. So yeah, David Goggins, you should definitely check him out. I think you might like him.
I gotta give a shout out to Brian. I think he's on right now. He's my boxing coach. And he is basically like that. Like he's like, okay, 30 more seconds and you're done. 30 more seconds later, he's like, okay, another minute. I'm like, you mother. But yeah, he just, makes us reach for this extra little bit of reserve
Yeah.
because he knows we have it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I don't know where that comes from. But I've noticed it in all aspects, and I really started hitting on that when I was doing video game development. That's where it first started really hitting me. That I mean, and we're not talking about like the college adrenaline that was just out of control, but consciously saying, you know what, I've got X, Y, and Z to do. I can do this. I can push through it. Um, And really, really quickly here, I do also want to thank we got Boxing B, Scott Wash, Doriel Tona, Bagalomat, America's Most Blunted. Who is that? Pete's friend, the Wizard Khalifa, Adam Greg D, Miss Alice, Dappy, CCP. We got a lot of good people here. Thank you all for coming through. And of course, Terra Veda, 808. Cool, man.
It's my wife.
Yes. Lovely person, lovely person. Um, So yeah, as we're going out of here, we're at 112 here, just so
Already.
yeah. We can keep going for a little while longer. We're good. So
I got time.
okay. So one thing I did want to know about with a lot of people seeing the machine side. You just get in, you do things, you work at Google, but you've also got this other side that's a very creative side. And I realized that when you were doing the creating the films and you were doing the writing for those films as well. So tell us a little bit about your film work.
All right. Again, it's something I really started pretty early on. Like
Hmm.
I started playing with cameras when I was a little kid, and I started just writing stories in my teens.
Hmm.
Again, they were trash, but I just did it. And I've always wanted to make films. In I think in my 20s, with a good friend of mine, we did some little stuff in this home camera. It was pretty cool. One thing was actually shown in the film festival.
Hmm.
But I think one of the people who really inspired me was Kenta Mesa, like the lead designer at RDR.
Hmm.
He made a short film in 2006. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I really should be doing that too. And then I made my first real short film in 2013 or so. I forgot. I think 13. And yeah, right now I'm about to wrap up number 4. And I just finished the first draft of screenplay number 5.
Nice.
And it's just, yeah, it's a great experience. And funny thing is, for the longest time, I thought, my filmmaking is kind of it complements my programming, which is very technical. But I realized, programming is also very creative. Of course, programming on the one hand is just technical. You have a lot of really structured technical things.
Hmm.
You use rigid thinking. You have logical concepts, but there are also lots of creative things you have to do because in the end, in a film, you have scenes that are supposed to convey something. You're trying to convey like a mood or an action or something. And a good director does it really efficiently. Like you could have a character talk for like 5 minutes, explain how they feel, or you could just have like a certain facial expression and you could show some visuals in the background, certain color schemes, certain images. So a good director can efficiently convey a lot of stuff subconsciously. Now in programming, you have your functions, right? You have all these functions have a purpose. And there are so many different ways if you're high level enough to do something that a function needs to do. Like a function could go through 1,000 different objects and try to scan every single one of them and try to do something. Or you can use a much better algorithm or different way of doing it. It's much more efficient. Kind of like you can do a scene, you can convey something very efficiently. You can write a code, you can write a function very efficiently.
Yeah.
And I mean,
So you guys just started making these parallels as you were getting into the filmmaking process.
yeah, I mean, it actually came to me pretty recently. Like filmmaking and programming, there are parallels in terms of how you have to approach it. You have to have ideas. Like in filmmaking, pretty often I'm just somewhere, just walking around. All of a sudden, I have this idea for a scene. Like, how can I convey it properly? What image can I use to convey something? And with programming, it's the same way. Like in RER, I did lots of work on the streaming system to load all the data as you're like riding on a horse. And we always had a problem with streaming being too slow. And sometimes I wasn't even at work. I was somewhere and I had this idea, like, you could, instead of streaming all the all the stuff in a circle around the player, you could kind of predict where the player is going to be in a few seconds and stream everything around there. So you just have to find an idea on how to convey what you're trying to do. And it's not really technical. It's really a creative thing. You have to have an idea. How do you get this across? How do you do this?
Yeah. So what drew
Then go ahead.
go on? No, no, no.
No, go ahead.
Finish the thought. Okay. All right. So with and what drew you though to um the filmmaking? Were you I mean you said you had a camera, but I know a lot of kids who had cameras and didn't start like actually getting into the filmmaking. Um for some reason I understand getting into programming a little better, but you know what it is? I think for me, with a camera and having to film things, it meant I had to deal with people. And as a kid, I wasn't into that. I was like, you know what? I'm over here with my computer. I'm over here with my video game system. So unless you're talking about hooking up the multi-tap and playing a multiplayer game, I don't need to deal with people. But a camera naturally kind of invites people into the scene. So maybe that was it for me. I'm just kind of thinking about it in my head. But for you, with the camera and everything, is there something, and you said this with photography, you're capturing a moment, you're um, recording something, but with a film, you're doing a little more storytelling, right?
Right. Yeah, for me, it is a lot about just telling a story. I like telling stories, and film, of course, is a fantastic medium to tell stories because it's so rich. You have so many different ways to tell your story. You got your visuals, you got your sound, you got dialogue, everything. So it's an amazing medium to get something across. And yeah, myself, I love movies. I love
Yeah.
how movies are made. I like to look at movies and see how this is made. I'm fascinated by how some directors get something across. And I'm like, I want to do this too. I want to be able to express these emotions, to express these things. And of course, in a way, it's also just processing things on my own. I mean, if you look at the stuff I'm writing, and like three of the films I made, including the one I'm doing right now, are father son stories.
Hmm.
And one is a husband wife story. So clearly, I'm like processing things in
Yeah.
myself in a way. I think.
No, I think it helps definitely. Um, I write a lot of short stories, and I have a little writing group out here in the Long Beach area. And once we were all sitting down going over, just we had like all of us had our little stacks of 1 to 7 page short stories or whatever. And my friend goes, she picks one up and goes, you know what? I think this one really represents you. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. In what way? Well, blah blah blah, XYZ. I'm like, all right, that's cool. And I'm like, why'd you pick that one? And she looks at me like, well, I mean, you were kind of acting like that in our last meeting. I was like, oh, well, okay. And she's like, but yeah, for like yesterday, or I mean, for when we were talking over email, you were acting more like this guy. And she was like saying, she was basically saying, no, no, no. I see that you're all of these different characters. You're all of these different people, and these are all your different perspectives. And I hadn't had anybody consciously kind of look at me and say, "Oh no, this that's you." See, when you get mad and pissed off, that's that character all the time. And I don't know if I've tried to actually consciously do that. I kind of realize it somewhere in the process that I'm working things out. I'm talking through things with this expression, but I don't know of a I think that's one of the things that a lot of creators share, right? They're getting their ideas out, they're um, expressing in a way that's talking to themselves, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And I mean, it's probably something that I'm a bad writer, but when I look at the dialogue of my scripts, I realize a lot of things these people say are things that I say a lot. So I bring myself into those scripts quite a bunch.
So when you're so what's your process when you come up with this script? What's your starting point for, or not just a script, maybe a film or a short or concept?
Usually a rough idea of just what really roughly what it's about. It could be just a scene. Sometimes I just have one scene.
Mm.
Just work my way from there. And it's weird because sometimes I have the scene and I just leave it for weeks and months, and all of a sudden I go back to it and I write like 4 or 5 pages worth or more, and it is nothing for weeks. It just comes in spurts. But yeah, I usually don't have like a complete picture at first. I just have some random ideas and I connect the dots eventually.
Okay. I think with That messiness of creativity, I think that makes a lot of people uncomfortable when they get into a lot of creative endeavors where you have to actually create something. Um, what's up, Love Steam? Uh, where you actually have to create something, that uncomfortable nature. How do you? I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but where you have something unformed and you realize you've got to jump in, do it, get started. How do you turn that uncomfortable feeling into fuel to go forward? If that makes any sense. Like, how do you embrace it?
For me, it's really time. Sometimes I just leave something for months, and at some point, I just all of a sudden get this sudden idea like, hey, I could do this, I could do that. It just comes to me.
Mhm.
And if I'm not feeling it, I just leave it alone. I'm like, okay, I'm not creative right now. I can't, I can't do it. And I probably would be a shitty hired writer because I couldn't meet any deadlines.
Hmm.
But since I can take all the time in the world, I'm like, okay, if I'm not feeling it, I'm not even touching it.
Right.
I can't do anything with it right now. I don't know how to make it better. Maybe I can't make it better. So I just leave it alone. And all of a sudden, a week, many weeks later, I'm like, oh, you know what? That would work. And it just at some point it just comes to me.
So do you journal at all?
No, I should, but no.
So I know you photo journal. I'll put that
Yeah, yeah.
separate category. Um, but I was in a work situation and somebody from one of my writing friends said you should start journaling. And it's one of those things you hear about for so long. You're just like, yeah, dude, what the f ever journaling. Sure. But I actually started trying it, and thanks to the notes application on my phone, something would go weird, or something would go good, or something would just go bad, weird, good, any direction. And if I had a moment, like I was standing in line or I was doing something, I say, you know what, I'm going to jot that thought down. I'm going to, okay, this guy did this and this and that. And over time, I started getting the realization of how to hold on to memories, feelings, thoughts, things that excited me about certain things. And I took that into my development. So later on, like when developing table tennis and stuff for Red Dead Redemption, I was in the habit of like picking out that one little feeling and that one little excerpt of life and saying, you know what? We could actually put this in the game. We could actually build something around this. So at that point, that journaling practice, it just made me narrow down and think about these little bits of time, these little slices of life. And I I brought up journaling and photo journaling because I've recently just started, doing a photo journal kind of thing where I'll and I guess I was doing it with sketchbooks, but I would actually take a picture of something and, have a little note with it like, hey, this is that time when whatever happened, or this is the park where that dog ran at me and I had to jump back in my car. And you just start remembering these little things. And the photo journaling has actually taken me to another area of my creativity. Um, so anybody listening, I don't know, journaling, it's one of those dumb ideas that high schoolers are told to do that actually works very well. So I would totally recommend it.
I like it. I mean, for me, I just write something down, like an idea for something. Like I may see something, get an idea for a scene or a random quote or something in a film. But yeah, journaling is a different approach, which probably complements it.
Yeah. I think most of it ends up being, I don't want to say wasted, but it's not so much that you're going to use all of this stuff that you're journaling or you're going to remember it. It's just the practice of, hey, this is a slice of time. This is a certain aspect, a certain vibe. Boom, I've cataloged it. This is a certain aspect of live, whatever, boom, catalog it. And when you go back and look through it, you can remember it so much better. You're basically externalizing, a part of your brain to this book of notes or whatever. And as you flip through it, some of them you're like, oh yeah, I wrote that. And some where it's like if it's 2 in the morning and I've had my peanut butter whiskey or whatever, and I'm like, holy crap, did I write that? That's brilliant. I don't know if you've ever had that kind of experience, where you just the brilliance jumps at you from some weird situation.
I had those moments when I see something I've done or written a while back and I remember it all. I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually that's interesting. I did that. Yeah, yeah, that's so funny. I had those moments. I did that. It just happens sometimes.
Yeah.
I think my biggest concern with journaling is it's a probably big signal to noise. Your signal to noise ratio is going to be a little bit out of whack, depending on how much you write in your journals. But you may end up with a lot of stuff that you have to revisit, and you only get a little bit out of it.
Yes. I think that little bit is what it's about, actually.
Yeah,
And I didn't get that until, and I don't have a good analogy for it. I'm sitting here trying to think of an analogy of like, well, if you make a bunch of stars, or painting a bunch of dots on a canvas or something, and all of a sudden, one of those dots is slightly off color or looks whatever, and everybody seems drawn to it. You're like, really, that one? Okay, hold on a second. I've got a star field here, and this is the important one, but I've got a whole canvas full of dots. I don't know. But I think that that exercise is kind of part of the process, and I don't know how to properly clarify that now, but um, I've done little Instagram lives where I've shown my stack of sketchbooks, and it's just massive amounts of stuff that I'll never use, never care about. And, back to technology, I think that freedom of creating something that you're not necessarily going to use, that you're not necessarily going to, um, you know, act upon gives you a certain amount of freedom to just keep putting it out there. You know what I mean?
I mean, we're talking about like what do I love about tech these days? And yeah, one thing I love is that these days we can take as many pictures as we want. Back in the days, you had to pay for every single picture you took on your little film roll.
Yeah.
We had, 36 pictures. So now we can create as much noise as we want. You can take as many pictures as we want, and you can pick those few that are actually good. Same thing with your journal. You can write as much as you want, and you can get that little nugget that's good out of it. So that is great. The only problem for me is I try to optimize for time because I just don't feel like I have a lot of time. So
Mm,
if I have a lot of stuff to go through to find the little nuggets of, little good parts, that may be prohibitively expensive
right,
because
right.
I just don't have the time to go through all the stuff I wrote to find those bits that were good. Even though, yeah, that is a great way to get those few little golden gold pieces that you want for whatever creative thing you do. Because it just takes a few things. It takes a few really awesome things, and everything else you can fill.
Yeah. So how do you get into a flow state? Um, and I guess I'll define flow state really quickly here. Just a getting into the zone where you're basically you're basically riding on your bike. You're in a situation where you're not thinking about the handlebars, the seat, the pedaling. You're just moving along in this great output state where you're just firing on all cylinders. How do you get into that state? Because you're talking about um, being efficient with time, you optimize what you're doing. And when you get into the flow state, you're pretty much you're cutting a lot of extra stuff out that your conscious mind doesn't have to think about. So how do you get into that flow state? Or
Yeah, that's a great question because that's really the state you want to be in as much as you can.
Mm.
And I mean, in all creative endeavors, like both programming and writing screenplays and everything else, that's a state you can't force. Like there are days when I'm saying, hey, it would be awesome today if I could write some stuff in my app or if I could get two more pages of my screenplay ready. But if I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling it. And I realized I just need to basically make right turns at intersections. So if I have a red light, I don't try to push through. I just do something else. So I try to write some code. And if I realize, okay, today I'm just not in the zone, I can't write code. Maybe I can write my screenplay. So I go to my screenplay. Doesn't work. I go to my film. Maybe I can edit something.
Mhm.
I just try something. And if I'm feeling it, then all of a sudden it just happens. And I'm like, okay, it just flows.
So you just try
But
to keep the energy going.
yeah, but I have to find how to channel it. And honestly, I had problems with that lately. I had lots of problems. I had lots of nights when I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I want to code. I want to write. I want to edit. What do I do? And I mean, the fallback is I can work out. That always works. But yeah, I would like to find a way to get into that zone, but there doesn't really seem to be an easy way. I mean, some people say, hey, you just smoke a blunt or something, but I don't know. That doesn't seem to work. So I don't know. I'm still looking for a way to force the zone. For me right now, the way I do it is I just wait for it.
Mm.
I just look for where the zone is. And if I find it, I'll embrace it. If I can't find it, I do something else.
Do you do you bring any random elements into your personal laboratory or whatever to try to spark something?
One thing I think that helps sometimes is just a change of scenery.
Mhm.
Like instead of going to your room where your computer is, you can take a laptop and go somewhere else. You can even drive somewhere. You can drive to the beach or something and try to write code there. Done this a couple times and sometimes it works, but yeah, many times I'm just not in the zone and whatever I try, it just doesn't work. It's more like a mental thing. It doesn't matter what my environment is like. If my mind isn't there, can't force it.
No, I don't think you could force the zone. I like what you were um you're getting at. I personally have like a just a series of techniques that I start into like, well, hey, maybe I can go work out or do something different. I've taken to YouTube now in a lot of ways where something I already do a lot of or I kind of am familiar with, I'll just go to YouTube and say, um, you know, weird yoga exercises or best yoga exercises for whatever. And I'm like, and I always find some person somewhere who's doing something weird. I'm like, huh, all right, I'll try that. And every so often, there's just something that kind of throws me off my normal pattern. And it does one of two things to me is it gets me in a place where like I like what that offered me, or I don't like what it offered me, and I understand what I was doing before much better. So it works in either pushing me in a slightly new direction or validating that my current direction is pretty good. So I try to do that wherever I can, even little purchases from Amazon. Like, you know what? I've never used whatever style of pen. Let me just order this $4 box of pens and see if it changes my writing, you know? And yeah, there's a lot of waste there, back to the whole waste thing. So
Mhm.
I don't know if I can get around the waste part of it, but I think that the gains kind of outweigh um the cost of doing business, if you will.
Right, right. I mean, it doesn't definitely helps. Just shake things up,
Yeah.
do something. Rock, especially because go ahead.
No, it's shaking things up. Um the hanging out with the Rockstar design guys, learning a lot from them. They were all about shaking it up and saying, "Hey, where's your next idea coming from?" Well, we were going to. yeah, yeah, you probably got that from some other game or this and that. Where's it coming from inside you? You're like, ah, you just can't like squeeze the idea or a new concept out of something. So they had this way, and I totally loved them for this. They had this way of pushing each other to pull from their lives, pull from their experiences, pull from all these different areas, and force you to try to make something out of it, even if it wasn't going to be good or not. And I know I was finally hitting on it when they started acknowledging, like, oh yeah, no, you're gonna try this out. It's not gonna work. That's fine. The fact that we're trying something out, wasting and doing that, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm at a corporate setting and you're talking about, I mean, they never said the word waste, but that whole experimentation process where it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to try something out. I'm probably going to piss off this programmer who's like, you're wasting my time. I'm probably going to piss off this artist who was like, I just made these textures. What do you mean you're not going to use them? There's this whole little dance of just trying stuff out. And that's one of the things that I definitely picked up from them, how to waste with the most efficiency.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I mean, sometimes I try something. At the same time, sometimes I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm not in the zone, I just don't even try. I'm like, okay, instead I should get some rest and hope that tomorrow the rest is gonna help me be in a more creative mood. Because pretty often I feel like I'm not creative because I don't get enough sleep.
Mm,
So there's that. If I say, okay, I'm just gonna force myself now to do something, I'm gonna just spend 3 4 hours just staring at the screen and trying to write some code or trying to write a page of a screenplay. In effect, just wasting that time. And I'm tired again. Next day, I feel as shitty as I did the same day, the day before.
mhm.
So sometimes it feels like it's better to acknowledge, okay, today is not a creative day. Today I do something else and try again tomorrow. So
You,
yeah,
do you get
yeah,
good sleep?
not enough.
Mm.
Yeah, I think well between 5 and 7 hours. I think.
Okay.
So yeah,
Well, that's pretty good.
that's reasonable.
Yeah. I know, for me, um, when I really got my sleep kind of under control, then I noticed a lot of the creativity opening up. So the creativity is kind of was paired along with good sleep, and then the more robotic side where I would just come in. I'm like, all right, I have to plow through whatever of something. Um, then it's like I could zone in, kind of forsake sleep for a couple weeks at a time, and then but I had to get back into a normal rhythm. So right now I'm trying to maintain like a moderate 7.5 in most things that I do out of 10, where if I just keep maintaining that, um, then I don't have these crazy dips down into like, the twos and the threes where, I'm crashed for an entire week or whatever because I blew my system out or something. Um, so yeah, I've just been trying to maintain this consistency. And I don't know, it gets kind of zen and weird, but I've been feeling a lot better about that. Maybe it's just the stage that I'm at.
Consistency helps a lot. I think habits, consistency, and for sleep. Do you remember Percival, physics programmer Robert?
Yeah, rough person.
Like, yeah, he did. He tried this sleep pattern where you sleep like a half hour every 4 hours.
Hmm.
So it adds up to, I don't know, 3 hours a day or so. But you're supposedly, because of how it's spaced out, it kind of, you get lots of deep sleep. And he did it for a while and he said he was functional, but he lost all creativity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I tried that actually, a method of that. I got it from Thomas Edison, I think, was doing sleep experiments where he's trying to go through all these different permutations uh of materials and ways of doing things for his inventions. And he had this whole little catnap kind of system that he was going in where, yeah, knock out for like a half hour, 35 minutes, wake up, do all this, send some letters out, talk to the engineers, go back to sleep. And he was doing that for a while. Um, but for like that really deep work, for me at least, I know that I need um good sleep. And when I say good sleep, I mean periods of time where I just, knock the fuck out. And, I wake up, eat a muffin, walk around the house, and then knock the fuck out again for another 3 hour nap. So I don't know what that's about. And I think everybody's sleep is a little different. But yeah, definitely depending on what I'm doing, I will change the mode of my sleep to match it. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
so yeah, yeah, but consistency, with sleep and everything else is really good. Um with where we are right now, it's in fact, speaking of sleep and everything, the and I guess we can kind of finish up on this and any other topic that you might want to jump onto before we close out, let me know. But one thing that's really been extremely subtle, but I guess not so subtle, is the role of social media in the way I think. Like I turn off all my notifications basically, and I only check Facebook and Instagram at certain times. Um, like people are like, "Oh man, how are you online all the time?" And it's like, look, I kind of pile this stuff up. I batch process a lot of my social media where it's like I have intention about I'm going to go on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. I'm going to send these types of tweets, just bang everything out, then close the program, then go cook dinner. Then I come back and like start replying. So I have this process where I'm not constantly kind of getting those little micro elements taken out of my headspace. That has been a seriously major change for me where I didn't realize how much it was. I don't want to say damaging, but I didn't realize how much it was just chipping away at my um, mental fortitude.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel you. And I think for me, it's probably worse because I believe I have ADHD.
Hmm.
So my mind just like
Yeah.
goes off in random directions. If I'm like writing code or work and I have to wait for it to compile or something, I just switch to Facebook and all of a sudden I'm in Facebook world
Yeah.
and I forget all about what's going on. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm at work. I'm supposed to be working. So yeah, I feel what you're saying. You have these distractions, and especially in the creative field, I think distractions are really bad because they call the context switch. Like you're in a zone, and if something takes you out of the zone, it takes you a while to get back in.
Yeah.
Which is also where I love working from home because sometimes at work people come to my desk and talk to me. I'm like, who the fuck are you? You ever heard of email? And it just takes me out of the zone. And being at home is nice because that doesn't happen. So
Uh,
it's yeah.
a lot of people can't deal with that at home though because they're thinking, huh, maybe I should go, check on the dog. Maybe I should go outside and ask the neighbor if. Then there's too many home distractions. So um, it's interesting hearing that you get fewer distractions at home.
Yeah, it works that way. I mean, especially now because the kids are in school, so most of the day they're just out of the house, and yeah, Julie just she knows that you know I'm working,
Hmm.
so she doesn't come in with random shit except if it's something good. Like if she does brings me something, or does something nice, and for myself, I just crank up the music and just zone out. And I mean, Google, measures a lot of stuff like you have graphs of how many lines of code you write and stuff just for your own just I don't know, they just like to have numbers of everything. And I can see this marked difference between before code and after code, and my numbers just shot up at everything. Like I was
Mm.
measurably more productive.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a lot because of the environment, because of fewer distractions. There's like not many people around me. I don't hear people talk. Nobody comes to my desk. And yeah, for me, I think that is very beneficial.
Hmm. So, do you do you prefer the, I don't know, open floor plans? I know this doesn't work
Oh,
very well.
fuck no.
Okay.
Yeah, and because open floor plan means you have all these distractions. You have people around you, you have voices around you.
Hmm.
And the only nice thing is you don't feel confined. And at my most recent seat I had at work was like, giant window seat. I could see the nature preserve in front of me. That was awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the same time, you hear people talk. So I always had to have headphones on. You had people come to your desk. And yeah, so for me, being at home is definitely better. Or having had an office would have been better too.
Nice. Yeah. We just got something from Ross Safari 2000.
Do you think Google will stick with the work from home? Yeah, we have the option. We can request work from home 100%. So if you don't request it, starting mid January, you're supposed to come back to the office 3 days a week. But if you request it, you can move wherever the hell you want and work remotely. And it gets approved as long as, your manager thinks it's okay, which depends on, like, if you work on hardware, for example, they probably say you have to be in the office. But
Okay.
in my case, my boss already said, if I wanted to work from home full time, I could request it and it would be granted.
Yeah.
And I will most likely do it, especially because the office is 50 miles away from where I am.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So where do you if it, I don't know if you can how much you can tell me. Well, what are you working on?
Uh, I could say stuff. It's actually not
Okay.
very exciting. It's not that exciting, especially go ahead.
I was about to say, just maybe the department or general direction of what you're doing over there.
It's roughly the support department. So we have all the tools for anything support related, like
Okay.
tools that customer support users. And it's actually pretty interesting. I thought, I mean, it sounds really fucking boring, but it's like,
Yeah, it does.
we use machine learning. It does. But I came to embrace it. We use machine learning to kind of like, take, I want to go too much in detail about machine learning to,
Hmm.
you know, take stuff and figure out stuff from that and just automate lots of things. So it's really interesting problems,
Yeah.
much more than I thought. So it's cool.
Does it have a different feel that you're working on something quote unquote real world instead of a virtual experience like with the game?
Yeah, in many ways. I mean, it with games, you have something, you make it. At some point, it's done, and then there's a big news article, and you can go to a store, you can see the game you made, which is awesome. You can hold it in your hands. Um, with Google, it's like my previous project was something somebody asked me for, and I'm like, hey, Google has that, and I showed them the website I'm working on at Google, which is also kind of tangible, just in a different way. And one difference to games is like it keeps on moving and developing. Like games, I mean, even if you think about DLC and stuff, still games have like one moment when the game ships and that's it.
Yeah.
And the projects at Google, by and large, they just continuously evolve, which is a different mindset, which also kind of takes away the whole pressure you have in games where it's all about the launch date. Like
Right. Right.
EA in Florida, Tiburon, they had the big clock on the wall with a countdown, the number of seconds until Madden ships. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have that shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we just push a new build every day, and that's it. So every day we have a new launch, if you will. So it's just a different mindset.
Yeah. I actually interned with 3M, and I got to create this little internal website where I just basically scraped a bunch of information from other internal websites and put them on this nice little page. And I was like, hey, just click here and here are the team members and who's working on what, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of an organizational thing. We didn't have a wiki at the time. They were just like, hey, listen, you're a janky little intern. Just throw this together so we can have a place where we can get our information. And it's like, cool. And it was this rolling process. And I know what you mean now because it was a rolling process. It wasn't like a big launch or anything. And at some point, my manager comes up and says, "Hey, we're going to start, we're going to start using this for external communications." I'm like, wait, what? So it's not just the people like downstairs on the third floor or the people over in building B. I was like, no, no, no. We're gonna connect this to the external people so they can, do whatever else. And it was like I'm nervous because I'm thinking I'm in the launch mindset, right? Or we gotta make a game, make a product, make a this and that. And they're like, no, 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 don't worry, it's gonna be all good. We're gonna have some people come up and they'll talk to you and we'll just make this change over here. It was so relaxing in a way, just because, yeah, you were able to kind of move along at a consistent pace as we were talking about before. So yeah, I get that. That's wow, I couldn't imagine working like that all the time though. That's weird. I like it. So we got another one from Rastafari here. How's machine learning altered the development landscape?
I mean, Google is all about machine learning. Like at some point a few years ago, they kind of recommended that every single employee take a machine learning class so we can find ways to apply it. And yeah, right now, the project I did last year used machine learning. The project I'm doing right now is using machine learning. Yeah, it is pretty cool because it does give you a lot of opportunities and things that we never really could do before. Like what you mentioned earlier, Google Photos, like automatically tagging things and detecting things. I mean, all of this machine learning. It's like really cool features. Sometimes I feel like machine learning is a bit of a solution for, and you have to find a problem for it. Again, especially at Google, because it is so cool being like a intelligence first company. Sometimes it feels like they want you to find a problem to solve with machine learning. But still, it is a pretty cool thing, pretty powerful thing.
Right. And and of course you're over there. Do they still have the what is it, 20% time? Um,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I
And
started
for those of who don't know, the 20% time is, as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically, you work 80% of the time on whatever your assigned task project is, and then 20% of the time you get to work on a project of your own design or own choosing at least.
Yeah, actually, you can choose. You can do your own project or you can just go somewhere else. So 4 years ago, I did a 20% where just created a new debugging system for Android Studio, but I just never finished it. So, but yeah, I had the option to and I did it and it was pretty cool. And after COVID, I actually 20% on the Google Classroom project. So I just, I figured like everybody's using Google Classroom during COVID. Like
Yeah.
my kids in schools are using it, and even my kids' karate dojo was using it to submit like videos of katas and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is awesome. This is like really useful. I'm working right here, so I can help out. So I jumped in and I helped out at 20% on Google Classroom. And that was cool. And I actually got to launch a feature that made it for the school year of 2020.
Nice.
So yeah, that's what exists.
Is that something that does that happen like on a certain day? Like, this is my day for that, or how did it work out the 20%? That's interesting.
I mean, Google's generally not really micromanaging that much. It's not like you have to work on this here on Monday from 8 to 6 or whatever. It's really just get your shit done.
Okay.
And that's all. Get your shit done. And if you get your shit done, you can 20% and get something else done. So there's no hard and fast rule and all of what you have to work on, what and when. It's really just you talk to your leads about what it is you're going to accomplish, and that's what you do.
Right.
And there's a lot of flexibility in how you get it done, what you do.
Cool. Cool. That sounds great, man.
I like the sound of that. I like that freedom, that exploratory mindset that's implemented. Um, so
That's a cool thing, just real quick, because
mhm.
Google has so many people right now. There are 150,000 full-time employees, and you have all these people, and a lot of our tools that we use right now are just like tools that people randomly made because they felt like, those would be cool. And they just wrote something in their free time, and it was cool. And in the end, they got somebody to fund it officially, and that became an official Google product.
Name a few.
I mean, lots of internal tools, of course, but
Well,
also
not
Gmail.
internal, but yeah.
I think both Gmail and Google Maps were just random things people just 20% for the fuck of it, and they became now, you know, mainstays, like flagship products of Google.
Oh, that is excellent. I'd like to see more people take a not just in their professional lives, but even in their personal life. It's like having these little projects definitely make a difference. So
Another nice thing is, they also allow you to do your own thing at home, because that's actually, you can't take that for granted. Like, I think certain other companies, they wouldn't allow you to do any side projects at all. In your pretty much all tech companies and game companies, in your work contract, it says anything you do at any time belongs to the company.
right.
And at least within Google, you can say, hey, I'm writing this here. I'm doing this project. It doesn't compete with anything Google does. And if it's approved, you can keep the copyright, you can sell it, and you can do whatever the hell you want with it.
That's pretty amazing, actually. I like that.
I have my own LLC. I just got my trademark approved today. So, Evo Entertainment, the one you made a
Nice.
logo for.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's officially trademarked now. And yeah, so I can, I do write apps on the side, and I can make money with them.
that's very cool, man. Very cool. All right, so we have just hit the second hour mark, and I totally want to be respectful of your time here and everything. Um, really quickly, is there anything that we should be checking out or looking into? Um, movies, technologies, or something that's on your mind that we should be looking for or getting into?
I mean, in general, if you just care about the stuff we talked about today,
Mhm.
if you follow my Twitter and Instagram, there's just random pictures of all the things we talked about today. As for stuff to look forward to, I can't point to anything specific, although I do want to get back into making games on the side, VR games mostly. So maybe I will talk about something soon if there's more to talk about. Right now, I just have a bunch of ideas. And if I find the time, I'll make something and let you guys know.
We're gonna uh we're gonna make the Evo verse, the the Krehan verse.
I like the Evo verse.
Yeah, yeah. Well, very cool, man. I think this has been good. I learned a lot about you here. Went across a lot of good subjects. I think definitely. I'll definitely take away some of the flow elements of this. And if I ever do a tough mutter, I'll be contacting
You should.
how to shock myself into pushing myself a little harder. Definitely.
You should. It's formative. You should do it.
All right, do it. That's the word that ends this all.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
All right. Well, once again, man, I thank you so much. Good talking to you. Good seeing you. Um, Congratulations on everything you're doing. I'm proud of you. Glad to have known you. Glad to have known you. Glad to know you. Um, I really appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you. Likewise. You're inspiration. You're an inspiration.
Okay, cool. And we'll have to do this again, definitely.
Yeah.
So be aware after I run through the first run of people. I'm going to probably contact you again, maybe see if you want to come on talk about something specific. Now that we've done kind of the introductory one, so we can do a deep dive on some other topic. So if you ever have the vibe to talk about something, just make sure you let me know.
All good.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Take care.
Peace.